Hello everybody and welcome to another Fluid webinar series event. This month's topic is goal setting and I'm very excited. We have a couple great co-presenters with me today, Phil Case and Dan Griffiths, and I'll have them introduce themselves to you guys here in a moment. Right before we do that, I just want to remind you that you can comment to us at the hashtag Fluid Webinar Series, or you can reach us at GetFluid or at Griffiths CPA. Both of those are posted on the slide, but feel free to send any questions or comments to any of those handles and we'll make sure to respond back to you. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Dustin Cederholm. I'm your host. I am the Digital Conversion Manager for Fluid. I have been working with B2B and B2C marketing for about 7 years, and I have a focus on conversion rate optimization and automation and other business tools that enhance the business or your marketing campaigns and just general acumen. I'll go ahead and allow Phil Case, our Managing Director and Partner of Fluid, to introduce himself. Phil, go ahead.
Good to be with you today. We're excited to continue with our webinar series, and especially as we focus on growth acceleration for those businesses with whom we work. I think this is an excellent topic even outside of marketing that will really help you focus your energies and times in terms of those short and long-term organizational growth goals. And I'm certain the content will assist in those areas. We're grateful to have Dan Griffiths. He's been with us today. He's been a longtime friend and a mentor of mine and for our organization. He's done several leadership coaching and training sessions with our agency and is very knowledgeable not only in goal setting but human capacity and some of the neurosciences, and I think brings a lot of wonderful value for this discussion. So Dan?
Thanks, Phil. I'm really excited to be here. I'm the Director of Strategic Planning at Tanner, and in that capacity assist a lot of clients in clarifying what their most important priorities are. And where I find them falling down, most are really great at doing the brainstorming session and coming up with the goals they want for the year. When it comes to actual execution of those goals, strategy execution, that's where things tend to break down. And I'm really thrilled that you've served up this topic in the way that you have, that focuses on, okay, well, goal setting is one thing, but how are we going to take this and make it much more meaningful so we are more likely to follow through on the priorities we've established?
Well, and Dan, we are so excited to have you today and really looking forward to the conversation. Thanks again.
So with that, let's go ahead and get started. We figure because this is a goal-setting webinar, we ought to start by setting some goals for this event specifically. And so today's webinar goals, we wanted to establish two things. So many times in marketing, we talk about features versus benefits. And I see so many of our client websites that the verbiage on it really addresses the features of a product or a service or something to that effect. And yet there's so much psychology and other thinking that says humans emotionally connect to the features of something. We want to know, how does this actually integrate into my life, rather than just understanding the hardware and other features of some type of a product that you have. And so I think goal setting is really very similar in that respect, as far as so many times we set business goals, and by that I mean just all the business jargon and the numbers that we put up that we're accountable for at the end of the year. And those are always, we want to grow by 20%, or we want to grow by X, or win X amount of deals, whatever that might be. We did the same thing for this webinar, just so you guys can kind of see what the difference of those. In a business sense, our goals were to define goal setting, redefine goal setting, offer goal setting tips for management, offer goal setting tips for tasks, and then show you a goal setting template. On the flip side of that, we wanted to show you the features of really what you guys are here for and the value of why you'd be attending today's webinar. We're going to teach our audience a new way to define goal settings. We will give you 3 goal setting hacks that you can use immediately, and we will show you a real example of Fluid's goal setting template for webinar marketing so that you don't have to make one yourself. We hope that you get a lot of value out of today's discussion, and we look forward to explaining a little bit about how we see a little bit different world of goal setting. First off, let's go through the definitions of goal setting. The mainstream definition of goal setting is the process of identifying something that you want to accomplish and establishing measurable goals and timeframes. In today's discussion, we're going to present an alternate definition of that. And our alternate definition is the analysis of a journey towards a specific desire, the mapping of the process necessary to achieve that desire, and the achievement of that desire. You can see here on this slide that we have called out 3 words. That's journey, process, and achievement. I think that these are really huge. We point out journey because in the mainstream definition, we talk about identifying a process. A process is something that just kind of happens. It's, step-by-step goals. A journey is a physical, tangible movement from one place to another. And we believe that goal setting, if you are to achieve them, you will actually undergo a physical change. Your company might be bigger. You may have more head count. You may have to change locations. There's a lot of actual tangible things that go with meeting a lot of your goals, and that's part of a journey rather than just the simple process steps. And so we want you to look at it as the journey, as goal setting as a journey. We also want you to understand the process side of things. So many times with goal setting, we talk about benchmarks and milestones. But with milestones, there's a lot of process steps that lead up to that milestone that often get forgotten. We just check in every now and again to see if we're on track to hit the milestone. We don't actually, in most cases, know if at what point in the process we're actually at and how close we are to getting to that milestone. And so my thought is just to throw out milestones and have a clear and defined process to which you can actually monitor what step you're in. And that will help you achieve the goal. And in this, I want to again point out that the mainstream definition is that you want to accomplish. I don't believe goal setting is something that you should ever put in place for something that you want to accomplish. Goal setting is the process of finding out the steps towards achieving something. And if you're going to achieve something, it's a very different mindset. So often we don't get what we want, but in a lot of cases we achieve everything we go after. And it's a small, distinction in the different types of the words, but it makes a really big difference of what we want versus what we're going to achieve. And I think having the achievement mindset is what will really lead you towards reaching your goals rather than just wanting to do something and then at the end of the year not seeing that your goal wasn't actually achieved. And so those are the 3 words we really want you to pay attention throughout all of this. And that's really the basis for why we think this is a little bit different goal setting webinar than a lot of what you may have attended to. Anyway, I'll go ahead and just keep it going. We want to jump into goal setting for managers now. Dan probably has the most experience of all of our group here. He's a coach, a business coach and consultant in these areas. And so I'm just going to turn over the time to him and let him talk a little bit about this topic. Dan, please go ahead.
So if it is a market share goal, if it is an opportunity to grow the company in some way, why is it that we want to grow? What is it about? Are we going to be able to serve our customers better because we'll have greater scale, we'll have deeper resources, we'll have whatever? Is it going to create opportunity for our people? Is that what we want? We want people to have a chance to grow up and take on additional responsibilities within the company. What is it about this that is so important, this growth target that we're setting? And if you give people an opportunity to weigh in, it's much more likely that they'll ultimately buy in. The other thing that it does is it then empowers them when they go back to their little silo within the organization or the team to make course corrections as information changes, because they have the context that enables them to do that. They understand why the goal is the goal, And so because of that, if they get back to whatever it is that they're doing and they see something that's changed, they can make adjustments based on what they know all of that context represents. And what you're doing is you're training your people to think strategically in the rhythm of their day-to-day activities as they're pursuing these goals.
So I have a question for you, Dan. Do we worry about if goals are being set on an employee committee level, are they defining goals for the entire company at that point? Are they saying, here's how, company-wide goals cascade down to us and what I can influence? Do we worry about that difference of, what can I do something about versus where the company directionally is going?
So personally, I think it's a best practice to involve people at all levels of the organization in some of the organizational goal setting. Ultimately, you're going to have a CEO, president, someone who makes the final call and says, here are the targets. And they're going to have to refine that. You can't do that by committee. You can't have 1,000 people get together and all weigh in on what that's going to be. But you can get their input in that process, and you can help them be a part of a process that allows them to see what's going through those executive minds. What do they know that's causing them to think, oh, we need to grow market share, or we need to do this, or we need to do that. And if you can, we need to expand geographically. What is the driver behind that? And if they can all be a part of that conversation, whether you have a sticky note brainstorming session like this, or some forum or opportunity where that takes place, then as the goals are set, people are much more likely to be engaged in pursuing them. To your point, once those goals are set at the organization level, then the question becomes, all right, well, if those are the large strategic priorities for the organization, what am I going to do over here in my little part of the organization to move the needle on those priorities? How can we contribute? So you have certain goals that end up being passed down from on high that are top down, but then you have at least half of the goals that are created bottoms up to align with those organization-wide priorities, so that people, again, have the sense that they have a little bit more buy-in and participation in the process.
Fantastic. How about, I think next one is just establishing the frequency of goal setting, and I know internally I've been working on this with my team to have weekly meetings with individuals and then monthly department meetings and whatnot. What are your thoughts about frequency of goal setting?
Well, these aren't just my thoughts. There's actually some very strong research to back this up. Deloitte did a very comprehensive study. They're a large international consulting firm, and it looked at goal setting frequency within large organizations, so Fortune 1000 type companies. And they looked at the performance, the financial performance of the companies that were engaged in an annual process versus the companies that were engaged in a quarterly process. What they found is that companies that engaged in a quarterly goal-setting process that was throughout the organization, so top to bottom, all departments, everybody at the company was setting goals on a quarterly basis, even down to the individual level.
They had the buy-in.
They had the buy-in. Organizations that did that on a quarterly basis were much more likely to perform at a higher level. In fact, they were 3.5 times more likely to perform in the top quartile of their industry than their peers who just did it on an annual basis. And there's some real, sort of to that research, because we've all set our New Year's resolutions where, in January, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to lose weight, I'm going to do whatever I'm going to do. You don't really think about it again until, for those first 3 weeks of January, and then probably the end of December or January when you set goals again. The same thing tends to happen in organizations. We'll set a goal, we want to grow by X% this year, and then nobody will give it really a second thought until we have a big meeting at the end of the year telling people, did we grow by X%? Oh, we hit it, we didn't hit it. Okay, what's our goal for the next year? And that's kind of the process. But if we can make the increments smaller, it significantly increases the likelihood that we'll stay focused on those priorities and that we'll do what you've just described, Dustin, which is breaking things down into smaller pieces. Because to just say we want to grow by X%, that's wonderful. But if we don't take the additional step of breaking that down into something much more digestible, then it's just a wish at that point, even if we do write it down. But if we break down the goal-setting cadence into 3-month increments, it allows us to stay much more focused on those immediate priorities that are driving the longer-term results.
And does it also have an effect on, I mean, I feel like I get depressed if I look at a long-term goal and it's just so over my head. You know, there's not a lot of hope in those cases.
Yep.
Maybe a quarterly, I feel like it's more in sight. I can, you know, break it down and be more successful.
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, one of the keys to setting any goal, regardless of the time frame, is to identify what is the next step that I'm going to take in order to make progress towards this goal. Because when I set a goal, I'm excited about it. There is an emotional connection with that goal typically, because like, oh, we could do this. Wouldn't it be awesome if? And you throw that out there. What's happened in that moment is in your brain, you've just clarified your intention, and you've actually created a new neural pathway up there. That neural pathway will stay open for 7 to 10 days. And if you take an action within 7 to 10 days aligned with that new pathway, then the pathway will stay open for another 30 days. If you take an additional action towards that end, then it's open for several months. And once you've taken repeated actions, then it almost becomes a foregone conclusion. Yeah. And so there's a lot of psychology and neuroscience to how this works too. If we set a goal but fail to set a next step, I mean, we've all been in meetings where it's like, gee, wouldn't it be awesome if, and then we all leave the meeting, there's no specific concrete action that's taken as a result of that meeting. And so within a week, most of us have forgotten what we even talked about in that meeting. But if we'll set okay, what's the next specific step we're going to take and how we're going to follow up around that, then that makes it much more likely that we're going to remember and continue to follow through on that intention that we clarified in the first place.
Absolutely. I think that's fantastic. I think we'll talk a little bit more task-specific down the road. I think this next slide, though, is really important. I'll let you go through this as well, Dan. Yeah,
so the concept here is, in fact, I love the way that Fast Company phrased this in a recent article. They said, the truth is coming and there's nothing you can do about it. So in a world with Twitter and Facebook and where everything is available and transparent to the world with WikiLeaks and everything else you could possibly imagine, if we're still as organizations trying to hide the goals from people and say, okay, well, only certain people can know what our targets are. Admittedly, there's probably some industries where that still has to happen, maybe in defense contractors, and there might be some others where they've still got to silo some of that information. But the fact is the information's out there. So if we create transparency to what those objectives are and transparency relative to our progress towards those objectives, then it's much more likely that everyone in the organization can begin to pitch in and help and contribute. Think of a nonprofit that's trying to raise $1 million by the end of the quarter or whatever the case is. Having a big barometer there on the wall at the front desk or whatever that shows progress toward that goal can be really, really inspiring. And with the technology tools that are available now, there are so many of them. I'll mention a couple. One of them is called KPI Fire. There's another out there called BetterWorks that we actually use at my firm. But these are software tools that allow you to create total transparency with what the goals are we're working with in our organization. So at Tanner, I know what the president of the firm is working on. I know what his personal goals are because I can see them. I can pull them right up. Now, there's certain things that people can make private, but most of the stuff is totally transparent. We know what the firm goals are, what our revenue goal is. Even the brand new intern that just started a couple of weeks ago, they know what the firm revenue goals are. They know what the head of the department is working on, what their personal goals are that they're focused on. And then they can begin pitching in and helping out and contributing to those things instead of keeping them hidden in an Excel spreadsheet somewhere that nobody looks at.
I can't agree with you more. I think the idea of transparency is, with companies at least, there's some portion of protectionism or whatever you call it, that your job is actually somehow more secure if you don't let anybody else in on what you're about to do. And yet, real leaders let everybody know what they're about to do, and the people around them recognize that they're the one that inspired that to happen, and that's the quality that is truly irreplaceable. You can always find somebody to do a task, and we'll talk about how I believe there's an instruction plan for pretty much any activity, but it's the leadership and how do you get people to come together and go after those goals. And I think the transparency is one of the very first things to break those barriers and actually start seeing that you're hitting deadlines and achieving goals more quickly.
And I think we'd find that the more transparent you are in your goal setting and communicating those goals down to the specific level, among the organization, the more people will rally around that, help achieve objectives and want to move forward. I think, to your point, the more secretive you are, it only hinders the process.
And don't be afraid if you miss it. So that's just it. I think sometimes we're afraid that, we've set this really aggressive goal, and then we're not going to tell people unless we hit it. But don't be afraid of that. In fact, the goal-setting research suggests that the sweet spot for goal achievement is about 2/3 of the time. So if you're setting goals that you're hitting about 60 or 70% of the time, then that means you're setting stretch goals. If you're hitting them 1/3 of the time, you're setting goals that are way too aggressive, or maybe you need to work on what you're doing to really stay focused on achieving those goals. Or if you're setting goals that you're hitting 95% of the time, then that just means you're sandbagging. So
sounds like my kind of goal setting.
So you really want it to be something that stretches you. Otherwise, why would you set the goal?
I think those are fantastic stats, numbers I didn't realize, but what a great baseline for the rest of us kind of take and maybe analyze ourselves, or we're the sandbaggers, or if we're really going for it. We're going to quickly go through a few of these next slides, but what we want to talk about now is just goal setting for actual tasks. And Dan, I'll let you set this up. I think we've been talking about process a bunch, but if you want to go through this slide as well.
Yeah, I think there's real magic to breaking down a result into the process that will create the result. If you look at people who perform at the very highest levels, take somebody like Tiger Woods or Jerry Rice, or sports is a really easy analogy to draw. Yes, the result they want is to be the best in the world, best wide receiver in the world. The result that Tiger Woods wants is to win the tournament or whatever the case is. But what's the process for doing that? Well, for Tiger Woods, it looks like spending 4 hours on a Saturday hitting the same shot out of a sand trap over and over and over and over again. What are the specific things that are going to yield the results we need? And sometimes it's surprising, but it's Pareto's law. It's 80-20. 20% of the things we do contribute to 80% of the results we get. And so the question we can ask when we start thinking about process is, what are the 20% of the things that I'm engaged with, or that my team's engaged in, that are contributing to the 80% of the results, and how can we do more of that?
And this, in marketing speak, just talks to attribution, and proper goal setting really is to put attribution in place. And I think for 2016, that should be a goal for all of those out there listening, that attribution is the defining of what marketing tactic actually leads to a bottom dollar conversion. And for most of us, we can't prove that. There's first click attribution, last click attribution, and a number of different combinations in between. But even starting with one concept and working towards trying to get something in place for 2016 would be a great goal and would actually lead to your better understanding of the 80-20 model. This is the part where I think, to Dan's point, processes are all about steps, and what is that next step towards getting it. And I argue that just like Legos, pretty much everything in life has an instruction manual to it. You build Legos by following the instruction manual. You build a car the exact same way. You do heart surgery pretty much the exact same way. That doesn't mean to say that these are mindless activities, but the fact is there are, in most cases, a start-to-finish process that if you simply follow it, you will reach that goal. And so few times do we have any of those processes because we believe in more of the creative thinking, or we want people to have freedom to act outside of the box, whatever it is. But I think that as a baseline, you should all start with the instruction manual itself and then go from there. And that kind of leads to the next thought. Or Phil?
So my 4-year-old for Christmas, who doesn't read, we gave him a Lego set, and this is his first Lego set he's ever had, and I was so impressed. I sat down with him and helped for the first couple of pieces, and it was a very complicated set in little pieces, what was interesting, I went away for a little bit, and he took that instruction manual, went page by page, and then I heard him screaming my name probably about 20 minutes later, found me in the house and said, "Dad, look what I did." And he had a goal to put together, his first Lego set. And I started and helped, but it came with instruction manuals that he followed to the T, and he got it. And he achieved his goal because he was, he took time to look through and carefully follow. I mean, he could have been creative in the sense of discard the instruction manual and hopefully that it just would have worked out. But there's no way he would have ever achieved that if he didn't look to either getting some guidance from somebody who had done it or simply said, hey, there's an instruction manual here, how this goes together, and click, click, click. And so to Dustin's point, I think this is absolutely true. I mean, with almost anything in life, whether it's fixing home repairs, a Lego set, or a business, there's usually always a resource you can turn to, and that will not only clarify goals and vision what's achievable, but to Dustin's point, you usually get more creative and more innovative when you know the boundaries within which you're working.
And if you can identify somebody out there who's already figured it out, who's created the instruction manual, then go talk to them, go plagiarize. I mean, in a legal sense, right?
Absolutely.
Go find out what it is that they're doing different. What's the 20% they're doing that we're not doing that's getting them that result? And that's a great concept.
Yeah, and I really like what both of you guys have said. The other thought is just think of Legos again. Like, this company is training your employees to do this from such a small age, and yet, and I would say this is more maybe in our tech world, or I don't know what it is, this hyperinflated sense of intelligence we get, but we get into some of the marketing world and all of that, and we throw the playbook out the window. What is it about us graduating after college and getting the real job that means we don't have to follow the exact same steps that got us to where we are now? And I see that so often that we're almost smarter than a plan, but that so often fails, and we really should look at that. And I wanted to kind of just talk about, I'm not talking about processes so that you have a cookie-cutter solution to everything. I think that defined process creates the exact opposite of a cookie-cutter program, And what I mean by that is once you have the process in place, you are guaranteed to achieve the end result, which solves two things. The first is you reduce the amount of errors that it takes to get to the end. The second is it gives you more free time to actually analyze the process you're going through, to continue to iterate and to make improvements to it. But if you don't have that to begin with, you are always in this limbo of what is the next step, and you're not actually looking at it from A to Z. And so I think that this process and knowing every exact step, and again, rather than milestones, which is the more traditional goal setting way, is really a much better way to do goal setting as a general theory. I don't know if you guys have thoughts on any of that.
It's interesting, when we work with companies, for us it's less about, when we sit down, we'll usually walk them through a visual to say, this is the process by which we will achieve incredible results in telling a compelling brand story and narrative, and we talk through this vision, and then the process and say, how we get there and achieve this is different for every client, but the process is proven, and we have the building blocks to do something great. Now, every building we create is different and unique with each client, but as long as we're using that similar and same process that's proven with building blocks that, in those ways we know we will achieve success that's repeatable. And so it's important for us to, even with our clients, talk with them in terms of, here's some guidelines and here's what to consider, and they want that. And all of us should want that. That's how we make the least amount of errors in life.
So we wanted to give you 3 goals, maybe goal-setting hacks to start on today. I think we've given you more than 3, to be honest, but just a quick touch point on the 3 that we've gone through are, first, get away from the business jargon and use relatable goals. Talk to people. Your employees are human. You're a human. We like to have human rewards for what we do, and so random numbers that are MBA or business jargon, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't hit you to your core, and therefore you're not passionate about it, and your chances of actually achieving it diminish. The second is just establish a goal-setting rhythm. I think that one of the big tricks that you can take away right now would be to go and create the entire calendar. And so if you have an event or a goal, that you want completed in 90 days, today you go onto your calendar and you set up a party or whatever it is in 90 days, a launch party or an achievement party, whatever you want to call it. But in that exact same calendar reminder, you put in alerts for each one of those different processes and the days that they go. So you are constantly being reminded of it. In my opinion, we go from day 0 to, maybe day 90, even if you're doing quarterly, but have you even thought about it in between? And so my experience has been that we do so much rush out of day 1, and maybe we're still gung-ho through about day 4, but just like our health club membership and everything right at the new year, we really start out strong, and then we really wane through the middle of the month, and then towards the end of the month we know our bill is coming, so now we're ready to make use of all this money we just sent, so we're back in the gym again just to make sure that we feel like we got our money's worth at the end. But really, you didn't actually think about the entire middle process, and ultimately that leads to you not reaching the goal at the end of the 90 days. And so having those alerts and reminders all throughout, I think, are really helpful tip and trick you could go and do right now for one of your goals.
And I think the growth comes in the process. It's in that middle portion when we're really making a difference. That's really when we're achieving it. And it's interesting, as far as the gym analogy, my wife every year gets so frustrated in January because she's a consistent every week and day of the year that if she's supposed to be at the gym, she's there, but January the gym fills up, all the machines are taken, it's overcrowded, and she just can't wait until everybody that, isn't strong enough to go past January finally files out. In fact, I found from a gym recently that they actually plan that 60% of their memberships go on hold for 10 months. And then come December, January, February, people will renew, and then they have another option to delay it again for 10 months. And it's interesting that even gyms are used to that, and people's human nature. So you have to hack that, as Dustin said, you have to change that course, which comes to that consistent follow-up. Is there something structurally you're doing to have that constant reminder, that kind of meeting with yourself?
And I think it's important to ask yourself the question, why hasn't it worked in the past? What is it that's been getting in the way? And really break that down. Am I just forgetting about it? Is it not top of mind? Are there other priorities that are creeping in? What are the things that I need to change about my current process that's getting in the way of establishing this new process? Because our environment today is perfectly designed to get us the results that we're getting. So what is it about the design of that environment that we need to change, the design of that process we need to change so that we get a different result?
Absolutely. We always do talk about all the best things, but maybe we're not analyzing some of the humps that we're not able to get over. So I think that's a great point and probably a slide we missed out on. The last one here, though, is just don't be afraid to cheat. I think Dan called it legal plagiarism, but the same thing, don't reinvent the wheel. Everything that's been invented has been thought of by somebody else. It's more or less a fact. There's very few things, if anything, that we haven't. I mean, I challenge you to go think of something, have an original thought, which pretty much just don't exist anymore, but it's how do you make an original product out of an existing product or solve something just better than the way it's been solved before. And that's the real analysis that will lead you to the success you're looking for. So now we want to just quickly show an actual how Fluid did this ourselves for our webinar events. And so we first wanted to do what we think you guys should do, and we started with what is the issue? And so our issue was our email program was running inconsistently and it lacked quality. This was leading to reduced webinar attendees. We were getting registrations, but they weren't actually attending. And we just weren't basically hitting our monthly deliverables. And so the goal turned into hit those monthly deliverables and provide our subscribers with higher quality content. And so the journey of that was to, and again, this is, what did my team look like at this time? And so the actual physical appearance or the physical journey we were going to go through was we needed to transition a temporary workforce to full-time status and go from responsive content delivery to being a proactive content driver. And so at the end of this, there was a physical transformation. We actually had a new full-time team member. That person had to be brought into the fold of our group, had to be given new assignments, and had to basically take ownership of this role, where previously we had multiple people trying to do multiple tasks, and it didn't look the same. And so we actually had to write out job tasks and a job description for an individual, and then go through the hiring of that individual. And so we literally look different today than when we did we are in a different place than we were prior. And so we went through that journey, and the process to achieve the, I guess, more tangible results of the email delivery, or to have a team meeting to discuss the minute details of our monthly calendar and establish the asset deliverables template. And in that template, we would go through every single process that it would take to complete that. And I think this next slide we're going to talk about is huge for you guys out there, especially when you're doing a marketing strategy or a campaign strategy, because we so often will put together, okay, we send the email and then the people sign up, and we forget that there should be an autoresponder email to give the people the information. And so there's a huge gap right there. And so going through every single process step is absolutely vital. And then the achievement is just the improved email deliverability and general process we'll discuss in a moment. And so the process itself, we actually, again, sat down in a room. We took about an hour and a half to do this, and we identified every single asset that would be required for this. And it turned out that there were 17 tasks to put on one webinar. And you would think it's just so easy, go on, have somebody sign up on a form, and everybody signs up, and then we dial in, and everybody's there. And, in theory, it seems like, okay, you just call a phone number, and there are people talking. But to make that happen takes a whole lot more, and that includes creating the landing page. But more than just creating the landing page, it's making sure that the URL is correct, adding the background image, getting the headshots. All these we created into individual tasks, and I'll let you guys go on your own time if you'd like, and we'll be sending these slides out, of course. But you can click, we actually have the 17-task webinar marketing checklist that we built available to you, and you can go on and see all the different steps that we took to achieve what it is we were trying to do each month. And again, I think the emphasis here is just that it was every minute detail of it, to the point of who does what. And so part of the thing that isn't on here are our personal assignments and even transition things. So if somebody completes this, who do they actually hand it to? And we identified that person's name for them, so they never had to ask the question, hey, I'm done with my work, what now? They knew where to push it to next, and the next person knew when they were supposed to be involved. And so everybody is more on board with the process, and it works like clockwork now.
That's actually a great process anytime that you're looking at setting some goals, or particularly if you're doing this as a meeting and talking about the process. Don't ever leave a meeting without answering the question, who does what, by when, and how will we follow up? And that's what you did, and that's why it worked.
Yeah, and back to the mainstream definition versus our alternative. Mainstream to me is theory. Our alternative is the actual execution of that program. And that's just the major difference, is you have so many meetings, like Dan said, where you talk about it. Great, everybody break, and you walk out the room, and you could ask anybody, so now how are you going to do it? And they can't answer that question leaving that meeting. You had a very unsuccessful meeting. So anyway, just a little bit about what we were able to achieve. We completed the 17 tasks that we had, on average 15 days ahead of schedule. We completed the follow-up tasks 21 days faster. We completed 100% of our webinar distribution calendar events. We increased our webinar attendance by 50%, and we decreased our email opt-out rate 300%. All this happened because we were able to have the processes complete, and then it gave us time to actually go through and analyze what were some of the issues that we had. Where were some were we touching people too often through emails? Was that making them upset? Were we sending content that wasn't actually helpful to them but was just filler? And so we actually were able to go back and rectify a lot of those issues, and the results speak for themselves, but we had a much more successful campaign. And that was from an hour and a half that we spent that has now made every month that much easier. And so that was another thing I did want to talk about. I don't know if we have a slide here, guys, but as we kind of move into the summary is just the training aspect of goal setting. I believe that training, everybody says, oh, I don't want to have a meeting for an hour and a half. And you can kind of see how that could be very unproductive, possibly very costly to your organization. But how many people really consider the cost of people making mistakes every month and month after month? What does that cost add up to versus the efficiency of having one hour and a half meeting and then everybody going out and doing their jobs faster and with fewer errors? I mean, doesn't that actually speak to the value of that type of a training? And I don't know, Dan, what your experience with training in these areas are.
Well, I think that's an excellent point. One of the places where I see us fall down is we have conditioned people to believe that our meetings are ineffective. Why do we do that? We walk into meetings, there's no agenda, people just show up, we don't even know who's supposed to be running the meeting. At some point, everybody looks around and then the awkward silence gets the better of us and someone starts running the meeting, right? And we start discussing issues, challenges, problems, whatever the case is. We get a lot of that stuff out and people feel cathartic about that experience, and then they leave. So if we don't walk into those meetings with a specific agenda, okay, for this meeting, our objective is to leave with a clearly defined process for who is going to do what tasks make up getting these webinars delivered. And we're going to leave this meeting with that completely knocked out. And in the agenda, right at the very top, before you list out what we're going to do for the first 10 minutes, we're going to do welcome introductions, and then we're going to do this, write down what's the purpose of the meeting. Just call it out right there. Maybe there's 1, 2, 3 things that you are going to accomplish by having met together. And then you have an agenda below that that says for the first 15 minutes we'll be doing this. For the next 30 minutes we'll be doing this. You get really, really specific about that. If we designed our meetings better, I think people would look forward to them more and say, wow, if we actually accomplish those 2 things that are sitting at the top of that agenda, my life would be so much better. And then people would show up to meetings, and they wouldn't show up 15 minutes late to meetings, and they wouldn't sit there on their iPhone during the meetings. And so I think we've conditioned people to believe that meetings are a waste of time. And they are, unless we do the kinds of things that you just described. So, setting an agenda. The next time you show up to a meeting where there's no purpose and no agenda, ask that question right up front. Let's spend the first 10 minutes of the meeting deciding why we're meeting. Because if we can't do that, then let's just all go back to our desks and answer email or whatever we're going to do.
And we all have the great fortune that Dan is even training Fluid for us, and that's one of the things he brought up in an earlier session we had together that I absolutely loved is stop for the first 5 minutes, actually write it down. If it wasn't done, take those 5 minutes, and won't that lead to such a more effective meeting? And I have some members on my team who pretty much hold me to that now, and I will have to say our meetings have been much more efficient, and we all leave more satisfied, and it doesn't feel like we just went in and we kind of spitballed a few ideas and then left again, which, we could do at any time if we want to waste. We could do that at the ping pong table, but the meetings now and just taking that first 5 minutes, so that's fantastic. So quickly, just a few summary items, but first is just to make the goals real. We are humans, and humans are the ones trying to achieve them. Make them relatable to a person. Embrace radical transparency. I love that one, Dan. I really do. I do not like not knowing what's going on around me. That could be another benefit with Dan. We've done strength finders, and one of mine, the negative is actually being overbearing. And so just pulling that back, I could actually be a leader in that task. But It just has to do with, I just want transparency so much, and that can even seem overbearing sometimes, and I'm not sure that it is. I'm sure, I'll take some of the blame here. I can do that. But at the same time, it's just what is really going on, and I like that because I like to make sure that the process has been well thought out and everybody is clear, and that's just having everybody knowledgeable of the task. So I think that's a fantastic summary item. The next one is just use your hacks. I really do believe if you took all three of these things and embraced them today, found one goal that you have and actually do them today, look at yourself in 90 days and see where you're at and see if you didn't go after that one goal a little bit better than the ones you're doing. Goal setting is not milestones, it's process steps. And the last one is what we were talking about just now, but is training goes a long way. Invest now and you can save later. That is the conclusion of our webinar at this point. We do have a few minutes for a couple of questions, and we did have a couple of questions come in. Dan, Phil, do you guys have a moment to answer a few of the questions we have?
Of course.
Sure.
All right, so let me just see here. Actually, this is a fantastic first question and one that I'm sure a lot of people are wondering about, but the question is, when setting goals, how do I know when I've set too many? It's a great question. I'll give that to Dan. You want to go ahead first?
Well, I will tell you what the research says about it. That same research I referenced earlier about setting stretch goals that you hit about 60 to 70% of the time, it also holds for the number of goals you set. So the sweet spot is somewhere around 4 or 5 goals. If you have more than that in the hopper at any given point in time, you're probably your impact is going to be diluted and your efforts are going to be diluted. So 4 to 5 is a good starting point. What I would also say is, if you don't have any goals, just start with a couple. You don't have to start with 6. Just set a couple. But if you've got 10, cross half of them off the list. And focus on because there will be some on that list of 10 that are more important than others, even though they all might be really, really important. Focus is where the power comes from.
Phil, as a managing partner for Steadily Growing Agency, what are some of your goal philosophies and the count that you've done to make a company be so successful?
I would say that keeping it simple as possible, even if you're an expert goal setter, it's hard to have too many focuses and priorities. And so simply saying, what are the top 2 to 3 initiatives we're going to focus on right now? Yeah. And that's it. And keeping it that simple. And then each week saying, what am I going to do this next week? What's my next step to accomplish that goal? And I found that I used to set goals and have each year annually, like 26 different points. And I just found that for me, I usually will set 3 or 4 now, and I'll actually achieve them, and they'll become more meaningful to me. And I think that's applicable to business. Outside of your day-to-day work, your actual day job, it's hard to do more than 2 or 3 things, to actually operationalize them and have a real impact in an organization.
That's another great point, is that you do want to make sure that if you are setting goals, you set them in the context of everything else that's already going on. So we have this tendency to just keep adding to the list and never subtract. If there is a really important priority we need to add, let's also ask the question, what should we get rid of that will make room for this goal or priority we're setting?
And I think that leads right into the next question, which should I adjust my goals throughout the year? Any of you guys?
It's interesting. Doing a check-in, it depends. Is this annually? Is this, I think checking in, weekly, and maybe it's not on a daily basis, but weekly or at least monthly is a wise thing to do. But I think it's more important, rather than simply set a goal, see, a month or 2 down the road that there is no way we're going to hit that. It does make sense to course correct. There's no reason to look ahead to say that is absolutely unachievable, but let's do what is still stretched but realistic. And so I do think it's important to iterate, and what you're going to find in goal setting and in business in general in life, nothing ever goes as planned, and new surprises will come in, and you learn along the way. And what was the original goal may not be appropriate a month or 2 into it because of something that changed or learned or a resource that became available, and hey, let's set goals in line with who we are today.
In that example, Phil, are you adjusting a goal, or are you just creating a brand new goal?
It depends on how much the shifting has happened internally. I mean, if possible, it's okay to just adjust the goal and move forward. I think that's the easiest. Sometimes it's we need a whole new goal because this was something we hadn't been able to even consider or conceive in our original brainstorming session. I don't know, Dan, if you'd add anything to that.
I think it's critical that you do that because it comes back to why are we setting these goals in the first place? Is it just so that at the end of the year or quarter or whatever we can pat ourselves on the back and say, I'm awesome? Maybe that's part of it, but the reason we're setting the goals is because it's going to allow us to perform in ways that we wouldn't otherwise perform. It's going to help us to focus on those priorities that we've identified are most important. So if the goal is no longer serving that purpose, in Phil's example, let's say that the goal is just unrealistic and way too optimistic, well, then that's no longer going to motivate any kind of a focus or behavior on our part. So we should change that goal so that it does provide the kind of motivation and focus and direction that we're hoping it will. So as soon as a goal has outlived that purpose, I would say we should consider adjusting it, changing it, moving it, not just leaving it on the books because we happen to set it at some point in time.
That's fantastic. And I think we have just time for one more, but the last question is, what is the best way to track and monitor all of our various marketing goals? I'm going to turn that to you, Dan, to discuss maybe ways to track goals in general, and maybe I'll follow up with marketing goal-specific tools.
So tracking goals in general, I mentioned earlier, there's software platforms that do that. You can Google, goal-setting software, that kind of stuff, because I think that enables you to create transparency. If you put it in a spreadsheet, it's tricky. And a lot of those software platforms will also integrate with things like your mail or your calendar, and so there's reminders and other follow-ups that are in your face all the time that really help. So I would recommend those types of tools to you. If you can, avoid keeping it buried in a Word document or a spreadsheet. But in the absence of some of those other tools, you could just kind of use Outlook and think reminders on your calendar and things to help you.
And I think you had a couple actual recommendations of software you guys use.
BetterWorks is one that we use. There's another out there we've vetted pretty carefully called KPI Fire that's also pretty good. Okay,
and we will send all these out to you guys as well with that. As far as tracking your marketing goals, Google Analytics is probably the #1 resource for that, and I would argue it's probably one of the least understood free programs that every person has. They just simply don't monitor it, and the reason they don't monitor it is it's a bit confusing. We actually have a link out we can send the two days to get your analytics certification, and so it really focuses you on the most important details of what analytics can provide you. But that is the single most important tool, in my opinion. There are a number of other tools on top of that, and we also touched on attribution, and so there are some attribution programs out there and even courses that you can take to help you define first click attribution, last click attribution, and all the others. But those, to me, are the best ways to track your marketing goals. The real secret to them are simply tagging the marketing campaigns that you're doing, and we do that through UTM parameters added to the destination URL. Again, we can add more information, and Fluid actually has a UTM builder on our site you can use for this exact purpose, but you just need to actually put those tags onto your campaigns and then use Google Analytics to look inside of it to determine which campaigns actually worked, and then remove the ones that aren't really working. And so there are a number of other high-level tools, but I'm going to venture to say most of us aren't doing analytics well enough, so I'll focus your energy in one area. Phil, anything on that?
No, I would say that Dustin and his team is an excellent resource in terms of those technical marketing goals and digital and helping set those so they're in your face. And Dan, I'm sure would be happy to respond to additional questions regarding organizational goals and ways to track and measure those. But we certainly appreciate you today. We thank you for being on the webinar. Please feel free. We'll be publishing this information, and again, follow us at GetFluid and at Griffith CPA, and then #FluidWebinarSeries.
Absolutely, and we'll see you guys next month on the last Tuesday of the month, 11:30. Dan, I can't thank you enough for all your expertise and assistance with us, with this topic today. Thank you.
Thanks, Dustin.
Have a good one. Bye, guys.